Have you ever heard a river talk? No? Yeah. Me neither, at least. Not until tonight. Tonight, I'm sitting here by a quiet river, dark as ink, calm as a heavy blanket in winter, cool enough to remind you you're alive, warm enough that you don't want to move. The breeze brushes through my hair, and the tall grass nods along. Maybe they're listening to me. Or maybe they're just falling asleep. Hard to tell. Far away. A frog croaks, ribbit, ribbit, and the water taps softly against the wooden dock. Tap, tap, it sounds like a lullaby. Or maybe the river's whispering, hey, put the phone down. Go to sleep already. I look down, the moon's lying there on the water, tilting slightly, like she's taking a selfie with the stars. Tiny ripples sparkle. Fish glide through silver light. It's so peaceful that even someone with a broken heart would probably pause their sadness just to chill for a bit. Try this. Take a deep breath in, and let it out. Slowly. Smell the air, the scent of water, of grass, of midnight itself. And if you smell something weird, don't worry. It's probably just the reeds, not the fish. Probably. There's no rush tonight. Everything has slowed down, your heartbeat, your thoughts, even the Wi-Fi. Only the river keeps flowing, gentle. Patient, like it knows all the world's secrets and won't tell. So here we are, you and me, sitting beside the water like two dream travelers on a lazy night. No deadlines, no unread messages, no one telling you to wake up early. Just the night, just the river, and a story that begins with the soft sound of water, tap, tap, drifting farther and farther, until you can't quite tell whether you're listening or already dreaming. The river was wide and dark, stretching like a piece of silk spilled across the earth. It didn't rush, it didn't roar, it just breathed. Slow, even, patient. The kind of movement that makes you forget where you end and the night begins. The surface shimmered faintly, touched by moonlight, like someone had drawn silver lines just to remind the world that beauty doesn't need to be loud. If you listened closely, and I mean really listened, you could almost hear the river whispering. Not in words, but in rhythm. It was the sound of the world exhaling. The kind of sound that says, hey, relax. You made it through the day. You're allowed to rest now. The little ripples had personalities of their own. Some danced. Some drifted lazily. Some bumped into each other like sleepy children refusing to go to bed. I swear one of them giggled. The water brushed against the shore in slow applause, as if congratulating the night for arriving on time. It carried a soft murmur, the kind of voice that doesn't need to be understood to be comforting. And as it spoke, the air around seemed to slow down with it. Even the stars looked like they were blinking slower, as though they, too, were getting drowsy. I dipped my hand into the river, and the coolness wrapped around my fingers like silk ribbons. For a moment, it felt like I was touching something eternal, something older than words, older than memory, older than sleep itself. The river didn't pull or push, it simply flowed, like time on its day off. It hummed quietly, an ancient lullaby no one wrote down but everyone somehow remembered. The more I listened, the more I felt like the river was alive, not just alive, but aware of my tiredness, my thoughts, my quiet little sighs, and maybe, just maybe, it was answering back. There was a sound, shh, shh, not from the wind, not from the trees, but from the water itself, sliding past the rocks in an endless hush. It was the world's gentlest hush now. You could almost imagine the river as an old friend, the kind that doesn't ask questions, doesn't offer advice, just sits beside you and says nothing until you finally stop thinking. And there, in that silence, everything feels right again. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaked once, loud and proud, as if trying to upstage the moon. The moon, of course, ignored him completely. She was too busy admiring her own reflection on the water. And I couldn't help but laugh softly. Even nature has its divas. The frog croaked again, louder this time, and the river answered with a ripple that looked suspiciously like an eye roll. I almost expected it to say, "Pipe down, buddy." Some of us are trying to be poetic here. The breeze carried a faint sweetness, the scent of grass and wet earth. It slid past my skin, whispering secrets in a language I couldn't understand but didn't need to. The reeds by the shore swayed slowly, their shadows weaving in and out of moonlight. Every movement was measured, calm, deliberate, as if even the smallest blade of grass had learned the art of letting go. I leaned back, propping myself on my elbows, and stared up at the sky. The stars were so bright that for a second I wondered if they were trying to see themselves reflected in the river too. Maybe that's why the water shimmered, maybe it was just blushing from all the attention. A cloud drifted lazily across the moon, dimming the light, and the whole world took on a softer hue, quieter, safer, cozier. And then, somewhere deep inside the current, I could swear I heard a voice, gentle, low, half a hum, half a sigh. It wasn't English or any language I knew. It was older. It was slower. It was something like, "You've carried enough. You can set it down now." And I thought, yeah, maybe that's what the river was always trying to say. Not to rush, not to fix, just to be, to float, to drift, to breathe. The sound of the water began to blend with my breathing, until I couldn't tell which was which anymore. Every inhale matched the rise of the waves. Every exhale matched their fall. The night wrapped around me like a soft blanket, and even my thoughts began to dissolve into the rhythm, small, harmless, and finally quiet. The edges of the world blurred. The stars softened into tiny lanterns in a dream I hadn't realized I'd entered, and just before my mind slipped beneath the surface of sleep, I felt the river's voice again, playful this time, teasing. "See? Told you I could make you rest." I smiled in the dark. Maybe I whispered back. I can't remember. The water was whispering too. The moon was listening. And everything was finally, perfectly, still. The dock was old, not the kind of old that complains, but the kind that creaks just enough to remind you it's still doing its job. Each board carried the scent of rain and river water, soaked in years of moonlight and quiet. I stepped onto it gently, and it answered with a soft groan. like a sleepy old friend saying, "Careful now. I'm not as young as I used to be." The night air was thick with calm, a little damp, a little sweet, and somewhere above, the moon leaned over the clouds as if trying to see what I was up to. A small lantern hung at the edge of the dock, swaying lazily in the breeze. Its flame flickered in rhythm with the ripples below, like they were breathing together. The light wasn't bright, it didn't need to be. It glowed the way a heartbeat glows when no one's looking. It shimmered gold against the water, and for a moment I could swear the river smiled back. I crouched near it, curious, feeling like a guest at some quiet midnight ceremony I hadn't been invited to but was somehow expected at. The flame leaned toward me and then away, teasing, as though it knew I'd fallen for its tiny dance. Every time the wind nudged it, it bent gracefully, never breaking, never angry, just going with the flow, literally. I thought to myself, if I could handle life like that little flame, I'd probably be much more peaceful, or at least less dramatic. The lantern flickered again, as if laughing at me. It had that kind of personality, calm, but slightly sassy. The dock beneath me sighed again, and I could feel the rhythm of the water pushing gently below, lifting and lowering the world like a cradle. The sound, creak, hush, creak, hush, was hypnotic, as if the dock and the river were performing an old duet. I sat down, legs dangling above the dark water, and the breeze brushed against my skin like a quiet reminder that I was still awake, at least for now. The lantern cast its reflection beside my feet, and the golden glow rippled into pieces, scattering across the surface like dozens of tiny suns taking a midnight swim. It was one of those moments that felt perfectly ordinary and yet completely magical, the kind that doesn't make it into photographs but stays in your bones instead. The flame whispered in the wind. The water hummed below, and the night seemed to lean closer, like it wanted to hear too. I thought about how fragile that little light was. One strong gust and it could be gone, yet somehow it kept burning, quietly defiant. Maybe that's why the river respected it, mirroring its glow so carefully, refusing to disturb its golden shape. I reached out and cupped my hand around the lantern's glass. The warmth surprised me, soft, pulsing, alive. It felt like holding the heartbeat of the night itself. The wood under me felt steady, the water steady too, and for a brief, lovely second, I couldn't tell if the world was still or just spinning too slowly for me to notice. A dragonfly landed on the rim of the lantern. Poor thing probably thought it was sunrise. When the light flickered brighter, it froze, then darted away, unimpressed. I smiled. Even the smallest creatures had better bedtime boundaries than I did. I leaned back, resting my palms against the old wood, letting the warmth of the lantern brush my face in golden waves. The flame danced against my eyelids, and when I closed them, I could still see it, a tiny sun behind my eyes, still swaying, still humming. The river kept whispering below, endless and low, and the sound wrapped around me until it became a voice. Maybe it was my own. Maybe it was the night's. Or maybe it was just the gentle voice of stillness, saying what all peaceful things eventually say, You're safe now. You can rest. And so I sat there, between the water and the flame, the moon and the dock, breathing slower and slower until even my thoughts began to match the rhythm. The air trembled softly, a ripple spread, the flame steadied. The world had stopped trying to impress me, it had simply decided to be kind. I smiled again, this time without knowing why. Maybe the dock was smiling too. It certainly creaked like it was. The river murmured something approving. The lantern nodded. And in that small, golden circle of light, the night folded itself gently around me, quiet and whole. The lantern swayed softly behind me as I drifted further into the sound of the river, its light folding into the water like a warm memory refusing to fade. Every flicker of gold seemed to become a tiny door, opening and closing along the surface. And behind each door, there was something familiar. Not loud, not sharp, just echoes. The kind of memories that sneak up quietly, the kind you don't chase but somehow meet again when the night feels safe enough. The river carried them gently, as if it already knew their weight. Some were light, laughter spilling out on a summer afternoon, the smell of oranges, someone's voice calling my name from far away. Others were heavier, not painful, just older, like polished stones at the bottom of the current, smooth from years of being touched by time. I watched them drift, not really seeing faces or details, only shapes and glimmers, pieces of once upon a time sliding between waves. It was strange how the water seemed to remember everything, yet judge nothing. It didn't cling, didn't erase. It simply let things pass through, polishing them, softening the edges. I thought about how humans rarely do that. We hold things too tight, replay them until they fray. The river, though, the river knew better. It had mastered the art of keeping what matters and letting go of the rest. I smiled at that thought, half amused, half humbled. Maybe that's why water is so calm, it doesn't argue with the past. It just keeps flowing, while the rest of us try to build dams in our heads. Somewhere a drop of water hit the dock, plink, a perfectly timed sound effect, as if the river had just raised an eyebrow at my self-awareness. Touché, I whispered, and the river made another plink, as if saying, exactly. I closed my eyes for a moment, and in the dark behind my eyelids, the memories flowed brighter, not as pictures, but as feelings. The feeling of running barefoot through rain puddles when I was small. The taste of cold air the first time I saw snow. The way someone once held my hand in silence, no promises, no words, just warmth. They were all here, scattered across the water, shining and sinking, returning and leaving. In a rhythm older than language, the night pressed gently against my back, cool and alive, and the dock hummed under me, still creaking, still keeping time. The lantern flickered again, maybe jealous that the river was getting all my attention. I turned my head and grinned. "Don't worry," I said softly. "I remember you too." The flame steadied, as if pleased with itself, and sent a long golden ribbon sliding across the waves. It landed somewhere near the middle of the river, where the current was slow, and for a moment, everything glowed. That was when I realized something simple: the river wasn't showing me the past. It was showing me how the past moves. How it drifts without needing to disappear. How it never stays in one place long enough to hurt. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is, not forgetting, but learning how to let your memories travel without anchoring them to regret. I watched as the ribbon of light stretched thinner and thinner until it dissolved into the distance. And the darkness returned, calm and kind. The water beneath me kept whispering, low and steady, the same tone it had used since the world began, the language of moving on. And just as my mind began to fade into that rhythm, I noticed the first sound of rustling behind me. Faint and dry, the reeds swaying in the night breeze. Their shadows reached toward the river, bending and swaying as if to greet it. The air thickened with the scent of earth and quiet, and the voice of the water began to blend with the soft rustle of grass. The river had finished telling its story of memory, and something new was waiting beyond the dock, a place where water met the garden of reeds. And the night began to hum again, a little wilder, a little closer to dreams. I left the dock behind, the old boards sighing softly under my feet as if saying goodbye in their own creaky language. The lantern's glow stayed behind too, shrinking to a small amber dot that winked once, like a sleepy eye, before the fog swallowed it whole. Ahead of me, the path curved into something pale and glimmering, a field of reeds, tall and whispering, stretching into the night like 1,000 slender ghosts brushing shoulders with the wind. They rustled as I approached, not in alarm, but in greeting. The reeds seemed alive, too live. Perhaps, each one moving to a rhythm I couldn't hear but could somehow feel in my chest. Their tips gleamed silver in the moonlight, nodding politely, as if to say, "Ah, a wanderer. Don't worry. We whisper all night. You'll get used to it." The ground softened underfoot, moss and silt mixing into a cool, forgiving carpet. Mist hung low, curling around my ankles like curious cats. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth, of something ancient and green, the smell of rain that hadn't yet fallen. I took a breath, slow and deep, and instantly felt calmer, though a little suspicious that the night had just offered me an herbal sedative. Somewhere among the reeds, a cricket started chirping in perfect rhythm, a bold soloist in the grand orchestra of midnight. Then another joined, and another, until the entire garden hummed with gentle, overlapping voices. It wasn't a song exactly, more like the earth's version of soft jazz, the kind of sound that makes you think, maybe I am part of something bigger. Right before you remember that you forgot where you put your shoes, the reeds brushed against my arms as I walked deeper, their feathery ends tickling my skin like old friends trying to get my attention. One especially tall reed leaned over and brushed against my shoulder. I swear it was being nosy. I whispered, "Excuse me, personal space," and the reed bowed slightly, as though apologizing. The whole field seemed to ripple with amusement. The wind had picked up, but not in a rush. It moved like laughter does when you try to keep quiet but can't. Each step took me closer to the heart of the garden, where the fog thickened and the world felt just a little unreal. I began to lose the sense of where the river ended and where the reeds began. It all blurred. The sound of water became the sound of leaves. The whisper of grass became the murmur of current. The garden and the river had merged into one enormous breath. And then, through the mist, I saw it, a narrow clearing where the moonlight pooled like spilled milk. The reeds bent around it, forming a circle, as though protecting something precious. I stepped inside, careful not to disturb whatever secret ceremony they were hosting. The moment I did, everything quieted. The crickets paused. The wind held its breath. Even the river seemed to wait. In the center of that hush, I could hear it again, that low, watery hum. The same sound from before, only deeper now. It wasn't the river this time. It was something beneath it. The sound of the earth itself breathing. Slow, patient, timeless. It wasn't scary. Not really. More like standing inside a heartbeat that had been echoing since before people learned how to dream. I closed my eyes, listening. Each inhale carried the smell of water and moss. Each exhale carried away a thought I didn't need anymore. The reeds swayed around me like dancers performing for no one but the wind. Their movement made the moonlight shimmer across the fog. And for a brief, perfect second, I could almost see faces in the mist, not clear, not human, just suggestions, old memories, fragments of kindness, echoes of laughter that might have once belonged to me, or to someone else long ago. I smiled at them, not afraid, not questioning. The night didn't need explanations, it just wanted company. I let the quiet fill me until I felt lighter, as if I'd been rinsed clean from the inside. A single drop of dew slid down a reed and landed on my wrist, cool, tiny, real, proof that I was still awake, or at least awake enough to feel magic. The breeze stirred again, softly tugging me forward. Somewhere beyond the mist, I could hear the river's voice returning, faint but familiar, calling me back. I turned one last time to the garden, whispered, "Thanks for the hospitality," and the reeds bowed together, rustling in a way that sounded suspiciously like applause. As I stepped out of the clearing, the fog parted gently, revealing a stretch of water brighter than before. The moon had climbed higher now, its reflection rippling like a path waiting to be followed. The reeds behind me whispered their final farewell, and their sound melted into the hush of the river, one unbroken current, flowing onward toward the bridge beneath the moon. The reeds thinned as I walked, their whispers fading behind me until they sounded like the tail end of a dream I might have just imagined. The mist began to lift, curling upward into thin ribbons that glowed faintly in the moonlight. The ground firmed beneath my feet again, a small path of smooth stones leading me towards something pale and shining ahead, a bridge. It arched gently over the narrowest part of the river, curved like a crescent moon laid carefully across the water. Even from a distance, it seemed alive, breathing silver in and out with the rhythm of the night. As I stepped closer, the air grew cooler, touched by the open space of the river below. The bridge creaked softly as if stretching after a long nap. It wasn't an ordinary creak, more like a greeting, a little shy, a little proud. I placed a hand on its railing, and the wood felt smooth beneath my fingers. Polished not by tools but by time, by rain, by the quiet patience of countless nights. I whispered, "Hello, old friend," even though we had just met. And the bridge answered with a sound that could have been a sigh or a chuckle. From the top, the whole river opened up beneath me. The water moved slower here, as though pausing to admire its own reflection. The moon hovered above, doubled perfectly in the current, one in the sky, one in the water, and for a moment, I couldn't tell which one was real, or if it mattered at all. The breeze glided past, gentle but insistent. The kind of breeze that rearranges your hair just enough to remind you that nature has a sense of humor. I leaned on the railing and looked down. The surface shimmered like liquid glass. Every now and then, a ripple would travel across it, soft, deliberate, as though something invisible was writing sentences in light. Maybe the river was keeping a diary. Maybe it was just doodling. Either way, it felt like being inside a thought, one of those quiet, important ones that never needs to end. Somewhere to my left, an owl called once, short and low, its voice echoing over the water before fading into the trees. I smiled. It sounded exactly like an old librarian reminding everyone to keep their voices down. The river obeyed immediately, even the crickets took a polite pause, leaving just the hum of moonlight and the whisper of my own breath. I could feel the night pressing gently against me, not heavy, not cold, but present, a living thing. Soft and watchful. Standing there, I felt small, but in the best way possible, like a tiny note inside a vast, beautiful song. The bridge curved beneath my feet, graceful and calm, and I thought how strange it was that something built to connect two sides could make you feel perfectly centered. The longer I stood there, the slower everything became. My thoughts floated downstream, one by one, until all that remained was a stillness so complete it felt like a kind of music. The moonlight dripped down the railing, pooling between my fingers, and I wondered, half asleep, if moonlight ever gets tired of being so perfect. Probably not. If I were moonlight, I'd be showing off too. I let out a quiet laugh. The sound surprised even me. It was soft, round, and disappeared almost immediately into the night air. But it felt good, like the world had exhaled with me. For a moment, it felt like the bridge itself was laughing too, a long, slow, wooden chuckle that came from deep within its bones. Then the wind shifted, brushing against my cheek like a hand guiding me forward. On the far side of the bridge, the landscape began to shimmer, hills rising gently under the moon, their edges glowing faintly as if someone had dusted them with silver powder. The river curved that way, patient and inviting, leading me toward another quiet mystery waiting beyond the bend. I took one last look at the water below, watching the twin moons, one trembling, one steady, before stepping onward. The wood hummed softly under my feet, every step a heartbeat, every creak a farewell. The night stayed still, listening. And for just a second, I thought I heard the bridge whisper something as I left, "Keep going. The light follows the calm." I smiled again, because of course the bridge would say something poetic like that. Bridges are philosophers by nature. They spend their whole lives watching things pass but never moving themselves. If that isn't wisdom, I don't know what is. The silver path of moonlight stretched ahead, leading toward the next turn of the river, where the stars leaned closer and the night promised something softer still. I walked on, the sound of water below fading into the hum of crickets returning to their song. And just like that, the bridge disappeared behind me, swallowed by mist and moonlight, not gone. Just waiting, quietly, for another wanderer who needed to cross in peace. When I stepped off the bridge, the night seemed to exhale, long and slow, as if it had been holding its breath the whole time I was crossing. The air was warmer here, closer to the ground, filled with the scent of rivergrass and something faintly sweet, like the memory of summer still clinging to the air. I followed the narrow path down the slope until my shoes touched the damp sand at the river's edge. The moonlight poured across the water in sheets of silver, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty walking on it. It was too beautiful, too delicate, like stepping on someone's dream. And then I saw them, the stars, not the ones above, but the ones below. The river had caught the whole sky and decided to keep it. Every star twinkled twice, one real, one reflected, and together they made the water look alive, breathing light in and out, like 1,000 tiny lanterns floating just beneath the surface. I stood there, staring, unable to decide whether to look up or down. "You're both showing off," I whispered. And the night didn't even deny it. The reflection was so clear it almost fooled me. I reached down, cupping my hand to scoop up a bit of starlight. But all I got was cool water slipping through my fingers. The ripples spread out, blurring the constellations into something soft and liquid, like the sky had melted. I watched as they slowly reformed, patient and unbothered, rearranging themselves into new patterns. Maybe the stars didn't mind being moved around. Maybe they liked a little chaos now and then, somewhere nearby. A fish broke the surface, plop, sending another constellation scattering. "Really?" I said out loud. "Do you mind?" The fish said nothing. Of course. Just dove back down, smug as anything. I could swear the ripples it left behind spelled "you're welcome." The river always had a sense of humor. It was that kind of place, gentle, but never boring. I crouched closer to the surface, close enough that my breath made the stars tremble. For a moment, it felt like I was staring straight into the universe's mirror, and it was staring right back. I thought of how strange it was that light could travel for thousands of years, only to end up reflected in a puddle beside a sleepy traveler by a quiet river. Somewhere out there, a star was burning furiously, and here I was, ruining its dramatic entrance with a yawn. The river widened again, stretching into a calm, glassy sheet that caught the first hints of gold ahead. The boat drifted slower now, as though even the current was reluctant to wake whatever dream lay waiting downstream. The smell in the air began to change, less wild, more human, a faint trace of wood smoke, salt, and something warm and familiar, like rice steaming somewhere far away. The stars on the water thinned as the reflections of lanterns appeared instead, glowing in uneven rows along the bank. And there it was, the sleeping village. Tiny houses stood close together, their roofs low and curved, their walls darkened by time and weather. Lanterns hung at the doorways, swaying gently, painting soft halos of amber light on the wooden planks and still water. Some glowed steady, others flickered like they were breathing. The whole village looked as if it had nodded off mid-sentence. My boat drifted between two piers, quiet as a sigh. The wooden posts rose from the river like sleepy sentinels. A few small boats were tied there, rocking faintly, their ropes creaking in a slow rhythm that somehow sounded like snoring. I smiled. Even the boats here seemed to be asleep. From one of the houses, I heard the softest sound, the clink of pottery, a low murmur, then silence again. Someone turning in their sleep, maybe. Or maybe a dream slipping out through an open window. The windows were all shuttered except for one, where a dim light trembled behind a thin curtain. The light swayed like a heartbeat, and for a moment, I imagined someone inside writing a letter they'd never sent, their candle burning lower, their eyes half closed. A breeze drifted across the water, carrying scents that wrapped around me like a memory: grilled fish, warm wood, the faint sweetness of dried herbs. It was the kind of smell that reminded you that life continues quietly, even when no one's watching. The kind of smell that says, "It's okay. You're home now, even if you've never been here before." I passed a line of fishing nets hung out to dry, their threads glimmering in the lantern light like cobwebs made of gold. A cat slept beneath them, curled into a perfect spiral, one ear twitching at every ripple that touched the dock. The cat didn't bother to look up when I drifted by, a clear sign that I'd been accepted as part of the night's furniture. Farther ahead, an old boat was moored beside a pier, piled with baskets, ropes, and the faint scent of sea salt. A tiny wooden carving of a whale hung from its bow, spinning slowly in the breeze. It looked happy, or maybe I was just projecting. The river had a way of doing that to you, turning everything into a mirror for your own thoughts. Somewhere beyond the houses, a rooster let out a single, confused crow, far too early, or far too late. The sound echoed through the still air, bounced off the water, and disappeared into the dark hills beyond. The village didn't stir. Not yet. Even the rooster seemed to realize it had spoken out of turn. As my boat floated past the last row of houses, I saw a single old man sitting by the water, his back curved, his hat tilted low. For a moment, I thought he was asleep. Then, as I drifted closer, he lifted his head slightly. The lantern beside him revealed a face lined like driftwood, weathered but soft. He didn't say a word, just gave a slow nod. The kind that said, "I see you. I understand." I nodded back. The kind that said, "Thank you." That was enough. The boat slid on, leaving him behind, the ripples breaking the reflection of his light into 1,000 golden fragments. The further I went, the dimmer the lanterns became, until the only glow left was the one trailing from my own boat, faint, trembling, but steady. The night wrapped around me again, deeper this time, quieter, and the smell of the sea grew stronger. Somewhere ahead, The river was widening into something vast. Behind me, the village disappeared, its lights swallowed by mist. But their warmth stayed, not as a picture, but as a feeling, tucked somewhere deep in the chest, where all soft things go. The kind of warmth that hums gently when the world is still. The kind that says, without words, you can rest here, you are among kind people. The river rocked the boat gently, like a mother's hand on a cradle. I leaned back, watching the last lantern fade behind the fog. Its glow trembled once, then vanished, not like something ending, but like something folding itself neatly away. The night gave another sigh, long and satisfied, and I let it carry me forward. When I climbed in, it didn't rock, it just sighed once, like an old friend shifting over to make space. The moment I sat down, a strange calm fell over me. The night grew thicker, softer, and the stars seemed to float closer, their reflections wrapping around the hull like a constellation following quietly beside me. The boat began to drift again, carried by the faintest current, no oars, no push, no purpose but movement itself. The sound of the water brushing the sides became a lullaby. It wasn't quite music, but it had rhythm, like a heartbeat slowed by peace. I leaned back, eyes half closed, watching the sky tilt and sway with the ripples. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was floating on the river or among the stars. Maybe both. Maybe there wasn't a difference anymore. A soft breeze slid across my face, cool and sweet, and the boat turned slightly as if adjusting course, though to where, I had no idea. That didn't bother me. When you're carried by something this gentle, destinations stop mattering. You just drift. You just breathe. You just let the water think for you. Somewhere behind me, a frog croaked again, probably the same one from earlier. Still narrating my life without permission. Thanks for the commentary, I murmured. And the night chuckled in return. The ripples widened, catching the moonlight, and the whole river seemed to smile. The air smelled faintly of lilies now, though I hadn't seen any. Maybe the scent traveled with the current, or maybe it came from the dream I was drifting into. Everything blended together, the scent, the stars, the water, the faint creak of the wooden hull, until it was impossible to tell what was real and what was memory. And then something remarkable happened. The stars in the water began to move. Not the reflections this time, the real ones. Above, they shimmered, swayed, and one by one, began to slide along with me. I realized the whole sky was drifting, as though it had decided to keep me company for a while. It was absurd, but beautiful, like the universe was saying, "Fine. We'll float too." I laughed softly, eyes heavy, heart lighter than it had been in years. The boat rocked once, like it agreed. The river whispered back in its language of ripples, and the world, for that perfect stretch of silence, felt smaller, kinder, perfectly enough. The river widened again, stretching into a calm, glassy sheet that caught the first hints of gold ahead. The boat drifted slower now, as though even the current was reluctant to wake whatever dream lay waiting downstream. The smell in the air began to change, less wild, more human, a faint trace of wood smoke, salt, and something warm and familiar, like rice steaming somewhere far away. The stars on the water thinned as the reflections of lanterns appeared instead, glowing in uneven rows along the bank, and there it was, the sleeping village. Tiny houses stood close together, their roofs low and curved, their walls darkened by time and weather. Lanterns hung at the doorways, swaying gently, painting soft halos of amber light on the wooden planks and still water. Some glowed steady, others flickered like they were breathing. The whole village looked as if it had nodded off mid-sentence. My boat drifted between two piers, quiet as a sigh. The wooden posts rose from the river like sleepy sentinels. A few small boats were tied there, rocking faintly, their ropes creaking in a slow rhythm that somehow sounded like snoring. I smiled. Even the boats here seemed to be asleep. From one of the houses, I heard the softest sound, the clink of pottery, a low murmur, then silence again. Someone turning in their sleep, maybe. Or maybe a dream slipping out through an open window. The windows were all shuttered except for one, where a dim light trembled behind a thin curtain. The light swayed like a heartbeat, and for a moment, I imagined someone inside writing a letter they'd never sent, their candle burning lower, their eyes half closed. A breeze drifted across the water, carrying scents that wrapped around me like a memory, grilled fish, warm wood, the faint sweetness of dried herbs. It was the kind of smell that reminded you that life continues quietly, even when no one's watching. The kind of smell that says, it's okay. You're home now. Even if you've never been here before. I passed a line of fishing nets hung out to dry, their threads glimmering in the lantern light like cobwebs made of gold. A cat slept beneath them, curled into a perfect spiral, one ear twitching at every ripple that touched the dock. The cat didn't bother to look up when I drifted by, a clear sign that I'd been accepted as part of the night's furniture. Farther ahead, an old boat was moored beside a pier, piled with baskets, ropes, and the faint scent of sea salt. A tiny wooden carving of a whale hung from its bow, spinning slowly in the breeze. It looked happy, or maybe I was just projecting. The river had a way of doing that to you, turning everything into a mirror for your own thoughts. Somewhere beyond the houses, a rooster let out a single, confused crow, far too early, or far too late. The sound echoed through the still air, bounced off the water, and disappeared into the dark hills beyond. The village didn't stir. Not yet. Even the rooster seemed to realize it had spoken out of turn. As my boat floated past the last row of houses, I saw a single old man sitting by the water, his back curved, his hat tilted low. For a moment, I thought he was asleep. Then, as I drifted closer, he lifted his head slightly. The lantern beside him revealed a face lined like driftwood, weathered but soft. He didn't say a word, just gave a slow nod. The kind that said, I see you. I understand. I nodded back. The kind that said, thank you. That was enough. The boat slid on, leaving him behind. The ripples breaking the reflection of his light into 1,000 golden fragments. The further I went, the dimmer the lanterns became, until the only glow left was the one trailing from my own boat, faint, trembling, but steady. The night wrapped around me again, deeper this time, quieter, and the smell of the sea grew stronger. Somewhere ahead, the river was widening into something vast. Behind me, the village disappeared, its lights swallowed by mist. But their warmth stayed, not as a picture, but as a feeling, tucked somewhere deep in the chest, where all soft things go. The kind of warmth that hums gently when the world is still. The kind that says, without words, you can rest here, you are among kind people. The river rocked the boat gently, like a mother's hand on a cradle. I leaned back, watching the last lantern fade behind the fog. Its glow trembled once, then vanished, not like something ending, but like something folding itself neatly away. The night gave another sigh, long and satisfied, and I let it carry me forward. The last light of the village faded behind me, soft as an ember dying under water. The air changed, quieter now, cooler, touched by mist that carried the scent of both salt and moonlight. The boat drifted forward without effort, gliding into a stretch of river so still that even the sound of water seemed to have fallen asleep. The current curved gently, like a ribbon folding itself into a secret, and I realized I had entered a place where even time bowed its head. The stars above were few here, their reflections stretching thin across the bend. The sky seemed closer, the world smaller, as if the river and the heavens had drawn together to whisper. The mist hung low, brushing my face with fingers cold and kind. It wasn't heavy, not the kind that hides, but the kind that reveals by softening. The reeds were gone now, replaced by smooth banks and the faint outline of hills rising on either side, silent shapes wrapped in silver breath. The boat turned slowly with the curve of the river, every movement so gentle it felt like I was floating through someone else's dream. I leaned back and let the silence pour over me. It was a perfect silence, not empty, not lonely, but alive. The kind of quiet that hums beneath your ribs, that fills your lungs instead of air. If I listened closely enough, I could hear the rhythm of the river's heart, slow, patient, vast. Now and then, a drop of condensation slid from the oarlock into the water, plip, a sound so soft it felt like the world breathing. I started to count them, not with numbers but with breaths. Each one fell slower than the last. Somewhere far away, a heron called once, low and distant, and the echo took its time crossing the mist. The sound arrived hollowed out, softer than a memory, then vanished again, swallowed by calm. The moon hung low, watching from behind a thin veil of cloud. It wasn't bright anymore, just pale, quiet, humble. Its reflection in the river stretched and curved with the bend, turning to a ribbon of light that followed me like a path. I reached down and let my fingers trail through it. The water was cold, but it felt kind. It wrapped around my hand, then slipped away, as if it didn't want to hold on. only to remind me what gentleness feels like. I breathed in deeply. The air thickened clean, and exhaled into the fog. My breath joined it, became part of it, and drifted away. Everything that was me seemed to dissolve a little more, thoughts, words, even the idea of direction. I didn't know where the river led, and I didn't care. The bend was enough. The drift was enough. This was the kind of peace you don't chase, it finds you when you finally stop trying to steer. The mist grew denser ahead, curling around the bow of the boat like folds of silk. It glowed faintly in the moonlight, turning the river into a road made of clouds. The surface shimmered now and then, maybe from a fish, maybe from a dream brushing against reality. The boat didn't ask questions, and neither did I. Somewhere in that silence, I felt it, the exact moment when the river turned. The boat tilted ever so slightly. The stars rearranged themselves, and I realized the world was still moving, even when it seemed perfectly still. The bend was teaching me something wordless and simple, that peace isn't found in stopping, but in flowing gently with what is. I smiled without meaning to. The air caught the shape of it and carried it away into the mist. Maybe the river would keep it. Maybe it would give it back to someone else on another quiet night. That thought made me oddly happy. The current deepened beneath me. The sound of water softening into a murmur again. The fog began to thin. Just slightly. Enough to reveal the faint outline of something ahead, maybe the far bank. Maybe the first glimmer of dawn hiding behind the horizon. The night was changing. Slowly. Like it, too, was preparing to rest. I lay back in the boat, head against the cool wood, and watched the sky bend with the river. The stars above swayed with each ripple. And for the first time, I couldn't tell if I was floating through the water or the heavens. The difference had become meaningless. Everything, the river, the mist, the moon, even my breath, was part of the same slow, perfect rhythm. The boat drifted on, carried around the gentle bend, and I closed my eyes, trusting it completely. Somewhere ahead, the horizon was beginning to think about light. The night whispered one last time, not with words, but with a feeling, you've gone far enough. Rest now. And so I did. The mist had thickened again, curling low and soft across the water, so pale it looked almost made of light. The boat moved slower now, gliding through a world that no longer seemed to have edges. The air was cool and still, carrying that faint scent of wet earth and something almost new, that fragile smell the sky makes just before it begins to glow. I sat up slowly, blinking into the blur of silver and grey that surrounded everything. It was as if the river, the air, and the sky had melted into one another, leaving only motion and breath. There was no sound now, not even the frogs, not the reeds, not the hum of the night. Only silence, stretched wide and soft as a blanket. My hands rested on the sides of the boat, and for the first time, I noticed how warm the wood had become, holding the memory of all the hours it had carried me. It creaked once. A low, tired sigh, the kind that says we've come far enough. The first hint of dawn came quietly, the way hope does when you've stopped expecting it. At first, It was just a thin line along the horizon. A brushstroke of faint peach against the endless grey. Then, very slowly, the color deepened, rose, gold, a whisper of pink, as though the sun was waking up and shy about it. The mist caught the light and began to shimmer, every droplet turning to tiny glass. The river brightened, soft ripples of color spreading out like someone was stirring liquid sunlight into the world. I watched, half awake, half somewhere else. It didn't feel like morning yet, more like the world remembering how to breathe after a long sleep. The stars above faded one by one, reluctant to leave, and their reflections dissolved into the light beneath them. The moon, pale and gentle, slipped quietly behind a cloud, like a friend leaving without saying goodbye so you don't feel sad about it. The first bird called, a single note, clear and thin, floating through the mist. Then another answered, softer, somewhere far off. And then the air filled slowly with sound, wings fluttering, reeds rustling, the small laughter of water meeting light. The river seemed to awaken too, stretching under the boat, moving again with purpose. Though it was a calm kind of purpose. Not the rushing of the day, but the steady rhythm of something that knows exactly where it's going. I dipped my fingers into the water. It was warmer now, glowing faintly gold, carrying the reflection of the newborn sun. The current pressed gently against my skin, and I felt, for a heartbeat, that it was touching not just my hand but my thoughts. Every worry, every restless thing inside me seemed to slide away, melting into the water like mist dissolving into light. The air shimmered. The fog began to thin, drawing back in slow, elegant ribbons. And suddenly, the world returned in color, soft greens of distant grass, muted browns of wet wood, the quiet shimmer of tiny waves bending sunlight into silk. The boat drifted through it all, steady, graceful, the way a dream leaves the mind, not ending, just blending into waking, somewhere to the east. The sun finally broke free, a pale circle rising through the silver fog, spilling light that touched everything it could reach. The river caught it first, scattering it into gold dust that floated and danced across the surface. It brushed the bow of the boat, my hands, my face, the folds of my clothes, and it was so gentle, so precise, that for a moment I thought I might dissolve with it, becoming one more thread in the fabric of morning. The mist began to fade completely now, drifting upward like smoke, like memory, until the river lay open and endless ahead. The horizon gleamed softly, curved and delicate, like the edge of a smile. I felt the warmth reach deeper, through the skin, through the quiet, down to that still place inside that had been silent for so long. And in that stillness, I realized, the journey wasn't about arriving anywhere. It had been about drifting long enough for the world to slow to my pace. The night had not vanished, it had simply transformed, become the light, become the water, become rest. I closed my eyes one last time and breathed. The air tasted clean. The light hummed through my veins. And when I opened them again, the river was glowing, alive, awake, forgiving. The mist was gone, but its calm remained. The boat kept moving, soft as a sigh, carrying me forward into morning. The river had become quiet again, as though it too was finally ready to rest. The morning light stretched slowly across its surface, thin as silk, soft as breath. The air was warm now, trembling faintly with gold. I could still see the faint trace of mist in the distance, dissolving into sunlight like a dream deciding it was time to go. The boat drifted slower and slower, the water barely moving, until it felt as though we were no longer traveling, only floating inside a moment that refused to end. The world was hushed, but not empty. There was the steady rhythm of the water against the wood, a soft murmur, like someone breathing in their sleep. The reeds at the far bank swayed lazily, brushing the air with the sound of silk sliding over skin. Every sound, every movement, had become part of the same lullaby, the last song of night, the first hum of day. I closed my eyes and listened. The river was still speaking, but now in a different language, slower, deeper, one meant only for those who had stayed awake long enough to fall asleep properly. Its voice was no longer water. It was the quiet inside the bones, the stillness between heartbeats. It said, "You've gone far enough. You can rest now." The breeze touched my face, cool and tender, brushing away the last shadows beneath my eyes. The light pressed gently against my eyelids, not to wake me, but to warm the dream I was already in. I felt my breath slow, matching the rhythm of the river, each inhale smaller, each exhale longer, until the air itself felt heavy with peace. Somewhere far behind, the bridge still curved under the moon's fading glow. The reeds whispered their slow farewells. The village slept, its lanterns still flickering in memory. Everything that had accompanied me, the stars, the mist, the boat, had become one long sigh of the world, folding itself quietly into stillness. The river carried me onward, not to somewhere else, but inward, into that calm place beneath thought, beneath sound, beneath even sleep. I could feel it, that tender moment just before dreams begin, where the body softens and the mind drifts apart into color and warmth. The air shimmered faintly around me, a soft hum, the sound of peace itself breathing. The sunlight slid gently over the edge of the boat, laying across my hands, across my chest, until everything inside me began to glow the same quiet gold. The sound of the water grew fainter still, blending with the pulse in my ears, until it was impossible to tell one from the other. And then the river whispered one last time, not in words, but in feeling, "Rest now. You are home." I breathed out slowly, a small sound, half sigh, half smile. The air around me shimmered, the light folded over itself, and everything became still. No movement, no thought, only the soft, endless hum of the river, the same hum that began it all, the same hum that will continue long after I've drifted away. And somewhere in that silence, the world exhaled with me, a long, slow whisper of rest.